James Mitchell stared at his computer science diploma hanging on the wall of his tiny flat, 3 years out of university, and it felt like a cruel joke. He had applied to over 50 tech companies in Manchester. Each rejection letter cutting, deeper than the last. "We've decided to move forward with other candidates," they all said in polite, cold language. The bills kept driving, though. Rent, electricity, groceries. Life didn't care about his dreams or his degree. When his savings ran down to almost nothing, James swallowed his pride and took the first job he could find. Techflow Solutions needed delivery drivers, and they were hiring immediately. On his first morning, James pulled on the blue uniform with the company logo. The fabric felt rough against his skin. Nothing like the smart shirts he had imagined wearing to an engineering job. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. This wasn't the life he had planned. The warehouse buzzed with activity as James learned his new routine. Loading packages into his white van, checking addresses, planning his route through the busy Manchester streets. The other drivers were friendly enough, but James felt like he was living someone else's life. He had studied algorithms and programming languages, not delivery schedules and traffic patterns. But James noticed something interesting on his very first week. Every morning, he could hear voices from the glass office above the warehouse floor. The engineering team gathered there, surrounded by huge computer screens showing colorful maps and charts. Their voices carried down to the warehouse, especially when they got frustrated. The system crashed again last night. He heard Mr. Thompson say during his second week. Mr. Thompson was the head engineer, a tall man with grey hair who always wore expensive suits. 8 months we've been working on this problem, 20 engineers, and we still can't figure out why our delivery times are so unpredictable. James loaded boxes into his van and listened. The engineers talked about algorithms and optimization. Words that James understood perfectly. They discussed route planning and efficiency calculations, concepts he had studied in university. But something felt wrong about their approach as James drove through Manchester's streets day after day. He began to see what the engineers missed, every morning at 8:30. Mill Road became completely blocked because of ongoing construction. Work. The engineers' computers showed Mill Road as a fast route. But James knew better. He had to sit in traffic there for 20 minutes every single day. On Tuesday afternoons, the area around Manchester Grammar School turned into chaos. Parents picking up children created traffic jams that lasted for an hour. But the computer system still sent drivers through that route because it looked efficient on the digital map. When Manchester United played at home, the roads round Old Trafford became impossible to navigate. Thousands of fans walked through the streets. Buses ran late, and normal traffic came to a complete stop. Yet James watched delivery trucks getting stuck in that area because the computer told them it was. The fastest route. The more James drove, the more patterns he noticed. Rain made certain roads flood, causing delays that lasted hours. Road works moved from street to street, creating new problems every few weeks. Local festivals, market days. And even lunch hour rushes created predictable delays that the computer system completely ignored. James felt frustrated watching the engineers struggle with the problem he could see so clearly. During his lunch breaks, he sat in his van and listened to their conversations drifting down from the glass office above. They worked late into the evening, trying different computer programs and mathematical formulas, but they never looked outside their office windows to see what was actually happening on the streets. "We've tried everything," Mrs. Davis, the operations manager, said one afternoon. Her voice sounded tired and stressed. "The algorithm is mathematically perfect, but something keeps going wrong in the real world." James wanted to walk up to that, glass office and explain what he saw every day. The computer program wasn't wrong. It just didn't know about the real world. It calculated distances and speed limits, but it didn't know about the construction worker who directed traffic at Bridge Street every morning, or the broken traffic light at the city center that caused backups twice a week. But who would? Listen to a delivery driver. James had a computer science degree, but nobody at Techflow knew that. To them, he was just the guy who picked up packages and drove them round the city. The engineers had impressive titles, years of experience, and university credentials that everyone respected. James felt invisible. Watching a problem he knew he could solve, but unable to find a voice. Every evening, James returned to his small flat and thought about the delivery routes. He started writing observations in a cheap notebook, documenting every delay, every traffic pattern, every real-world problem that the computer system couldn't see. Maybe someday, he thought, someone would be willing to listen to what a delivery driver had learned about the streets of Manchester. 3 weeks into his job at Techflow Solutions, James had developed a routine that nobody else noticed. Every lunch break, he parked his delivery van in the same quiet spot behind the warehouse and pulled out a folded city map of Manchester. While other drivers chatted or scrolled through their phones, James studied the streets he had driven that morning with a red pen. He marked every spot where traffic had slowed down with a blue pen. He noted construction zones. Green marks showed where special events had caused problems, day by day. His map filled with colored dots and lines that told a story the engineers upstairs had never seen. The pattern became clear. Each week, Monday mornings always brought traffic jams near the university as students returned from weekend trips home. Wednesday afternoons saw delays round the hospital district when shift changes happened. Friday evenings turned certain roads into parking lots as people headed to restaurants and pubs. James realized something important. The computer system that planned delivery routes was actually very smart. It could calculate distances perfectly and knew the speed limit on every street. But it lived in a digital world that never changed. It didn't know that real streets had real problems that happened at predictable times. Meanwhile, the frustration in the engineering office grew louder. Each day, James could hear their voices getting more stressed as he loaded packages each morning. Customer complaints were increasing. Delivery trucks returned to the warehouse later and later each day, causing overtime costs that made Mrs. Davis, the operations manager, look worried all the time. We're losing customers. James heard Mr. Thompson tell his team one Tuesday morning, people are switching to other delivery companies because we can't give them reliable time estimates. Something has to change soon. The engineers worked long hours, staying in their glass office until well past dinner time. James could see their computer screens glowing in the darkness as he finished his evening paperwork. They tried new formulas, updated their software, and ran countless tests. But their solutions never seemed to work for a very long. James wanted to help, but the distance between a delivery driver and the engineering team felt enormous. He wore a blue uniform and drove a van. They wore business clothes and worked with expensive computers. During the few times their paths crossed in the hallway, the engineers looked through James as if he didn't exist. One particularly difficult week, James watched the company's problems get worse. A water pipe burst on King Street, flooding the road for 3 days. The computer system kept sending drivers that way because it showed as the fastest route on the digital map. Trucks got stuck in deep water. Packages got damaged and customers got angry. James had driven past the flooded street on his first day that week and immediately changed his route. But other drivers followed their computer instructions and ended up sitting in water up to their will hubs. The engineering team spent hours trying to figure out why so many deliveries were failing in that area. If they just looked out the window, James thought, they could see the flood water from their office. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday morning in early October. James arrived at the warehouse to find chaos. The main computer system had crashed during the night, leaving all the delivery trucks without route instructions. 20 drivers stood around the loading dock, unsure what to do next. Mrs. Davis paced back and forth near the office stairs, talking rapidly on her phone. "We have 300 packages that need to go out this morning," she said to someone. "Every hour of delay costs us thousands of pounds. Our customers are already angry about late deliveries." In the glass office above, James could see the entire engineering team hunched over their computers. Mr. Thompson pointed at screens and spoke in urgent tones to his colleagues. They typed frantically, trying different solutions, but nothing seemed to work. James sat in his van and watched the scene unfold. He knew exactly what was wrong. The system crashed because it couldn't handle the complicated calculations needed. For constantly changing road conditions, the engineers kept adding more features to make it smarter, but they made it more fragile instead. His notebook, now filled with weeks of observations, contained the real solution. The computer didn't need to be more complex. It needed better information about what was actually happening on the streets. Real drivers, dealing with real conditions, could provide data that no computer program could calculate on its own. That evening, James sat at his small kitchen table and stared at his old laptop computer. The machine was 5 years old and slow, but it still worked. He opened a simple presentation program and began typing. For 3 hours, he worked on slides that explained his ideas in clear, simple language. He scanned pages from his notebook and created basic charts showing traffic patterns. He practiced speaking out loud, imagining how he would explain his solution to people who saw him as just a delivery driver by. Sunday night, James had a complete presentation ready. His hands shook slightly as he saved the file and closed the laptop. Monday morning, he would try to find someone willing to listen to what a delivery driver had learned about solving engineering problems. Monday morning felt different from the moment James woke up in his small flat. Grey clouds hung low over Manchester, matching the nervous feeling in his stomach. He had barely slept, thinking about the presentation folded in his jacket pocket. Today, he would try to find someone willing to listen to what a delivery driver had discovered about solving engineering problems. James dressed carefully in his blue Titchflu uniform, making sure it looked neat and professional. He slipped the printed pages of his presentation into his jacket pocket, checking twice to make sure they were secure. His hands trembled slightly as he locked his front door and walked to his van. The warehouse buzzed with its usual morning activity, but James felt like he was moving through a different world. Every conversation seemed more important. Every glance from the engineering office above felt significant. He loaded packages into his van with extra care, his mind focused on finding the right moment to approach someone. During his first delivery run, James practiced what he would say. "Excuse me, I think I can help with your delivery system problem." The words felt strange in his mouth. He was used to saying "package for you and have a nice day," not offering solutions to complex engineering challenges. As he drove through the familiar streets of Manchester, James noticed everything with new intensity. The construction zone on Mill Road that always caused delays, the school crossing that created traffic jams twice a day, the shopping center parking lot that overflowed every Saturday afternoon. These weren't just obstacles anymore. They were proof that his ideas could work Round 11:30. James delivered packages to a law office near the city centre. The receptionist, Mrs. Parker, always greeted him with a friendly smile. "Running late again today, James?" she asked as she signed for the delivery. "The computer system sent me through Bridge Street," James replied. "It's been closed for repairs all week, but the system doesn't know that." Mrs. Parker shook her head sympathetically. "Technology can be so frustrating sometimes, you'd think. Someone would have told the computer about the road closure." Her simple comment gave James confidence. Even ordinary people could see the obvious problems that the engineering team was missing. Maybe his ideas weren't as crazy as he feared. Just after noon, James had a delivery for the third floor of the Techflow building, the engineering department. His heart pounded as he carried the packages up the stairs. This was his chance. But he needed to find the right person at the right moment. As he walked past the main meeting room, James heard the familiar sounds of frustration through the glass walls. Mr. Anderson, a senior engineer with tired eyes, was speaking to his colleagues round a large table covered with papers and laptop computers. "We've tried everything over the past 2 months," Mr. Anderson said, running his hands through his grey hair. "The algorithm works perfectly when we test it on the computer. All the mathematics check out. But somehow, it keeps failing when we use it for real deliveries." Another engineer, a woman James didn't recognize, pointed at charts on the wall. "The delivery times are getting worse instead of better. Yesterday, 3 trucks didn't return until after 8 in the evening because they got stuck in traffic jams that the system didn't predict." James stopped walking and listened carefully. These smart, educated people were struggling with exactly the problem he had been thinking about for weeks. They understood the computer side perfectly, but they were missing the human side of the equation. Looking round the engineering floor, James noticed most of the team members working intensely at their desks. Their computer screens showed colorful maps and complex data charts, but none of them were looking out the windows at the actual streets below. One engineer sat slightly apart from the others. Tom Williams looked younger than his colleagues, maybe in his late 20s like James, while the others seemed stressed and frustrated. Tom appeared thoughtful and calm. When other engineers walked past his desk, he looked up and smiled politely. He seemed more approachable than the senior team members. James made a decision. His mouth felt dry as he walked toward Tom's desk, the package delivery giving him a legitimate reason to be in the area. Tom was studying a computer screen showing delivery route maps, making notes on a pad of paper. "Excuse me," James said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. His heart hammered against his chest. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I think I might know what's wrong with your delivery system." Tom looked up from his computer, surprise showing clearly on his face. He had kind brown eyes and an open expression that made James feel slightly less nervous. "You're James, right? One of our delivery drivers." "Yes, sir. I've been working here for about 6 weeks now." James took a deep breath and continued. "I have a computer science degree from Manchester University, and I've been watching this problem develop for months. I think the issue isn't with your computer program. It's with the information the program is using to make decisions." Tom's eyebrows rose with genuine interest rather than the dismissal James had expected. He pushed his chair back slightly and gave James his full attention. "What do you mean by that? Can you explain it more?" James felt a surge of hope mixed with nervousness. "Could I show you something? I've put together some observations that might help. It would only take about 5 minutes of your time." Tom glanced round the office, then looked back at James with growing curiosity. "What?" "Yes, show me what you've discovered." The next morning, Tom Williams arrived at work earlier than usual. He had spent the evening thinking about James's presentation, and the more he considered it, the more sense it made. Tom found his manager, Mrs. Peterson, reviewing reports in her office before the morning team meeting. "I need to ask you for something unusual," Tom said, standing in her doorway. "Yesterday, one of our delivery drivers showed me some observations about why our routing system keeps failing. I think the whole team needs to hear what he's discovered." Mrs. Peterson looked up from her computer screen, her reading glasses pushed on her nose. She was a thoughtful woman in her 40s who had worked in logistics for 15 years. "A delivery driver wants to talk to the engineering team. He has a computer science degree from Manchester University," Tom explained. "He's been watching our problem from the driver's perspective for weeks. His insights could change everything we're doing." Mrs. Peterson considered this for a moment. How long would he need? 10 minutes. Maybe 15 at most. All right, she decided. Bring him to our 9 o'clock team meeting. "But Tom, if this doesn't work out, you're responsible for getting us back on track." An hour later, James stood outside the conference room door, his old laptop bag clutched in his sweaty hands. Through the glass walls, he could see 12 engineers, seated round a large oval table. These were people with advanced degrees and years of experience. Some of them earned more in a month than James made in a year. Tom opened the door and gestured for James to enter. The conversation in the room stopped as everyone turned to look at the delivery driver who had somehow ended up in their engineering meeting. "Everyone, this is James Mitchell," Tom announced to the room. "He's been working as one of our delivery drivers for the past 6 weeks, but he also has a computer science degree. He believes he's identified the core problem we've been struggling with for months." James noticed the different expressions round the table. Mr. Thompson, the head engineer, looked mildly curious but skeptical. Mr. Anderson seemed impatient, as if this was a waste of time. But Mrs. Peterson nodded encouragingly, and several younger engineers appeared genuinely interested. With trembling fingers, James connected his 5-year-old laptop to the room's projector system. The connection took longer than expected, and he could feel everyone watching as he fumbled with cables. Finally, his simple presentation appeared on the large screen at the front of the room. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity," James began, his voice slightly shaky. "I want to start by showing you what I see every day as I drive through Manchester." His first slide showed a basic map of the city with red dots marking problem areas. "Every morning at 8:30, Mill Road becomes completely blocked because of construction work that's been going on for 3 weeks. But your routing system still sends drivers down Mill Road because on the computer, it looks like the fastest route." James clicked to his next slide, which showed traffic patterns round Manchester Grammar School. On Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, the area around the school turns into chaos for about an hour. Parents picking up children create traffic jams that can delay deliveries by 20 or 30 minutes. But again, the computer doesn't know this is happening. Mr. Anderson shifted in his seat, looking less skeptical now. "Go on," he said. "When Manchester United plays at home," James continued, showing photos he had taken of crowded streets round Old Trafford, "the roads become impossible to navigate for several hours. Thousands of people walking to the stadium, buses running late, police redirecting traffic. I've learned to avoid that entire area on game days. But our computer system still tries to send trucks through there." Double quotes. Mrs. Peterson leaned forward, studying James's simple charts with growing interest. "These are patterns that happen regularly, aren't they?" "Exactly," James replied, feeling his confidence grew. "Your algorithm is actually very good at calculating distances and speed limits. The mathematics is perfect." but it's working with incomplete information. The computer thinks the fastest route to the industrial district is straight through downtown Manchester, but every driver knows to avoid downtown during morning rush hour. He showed his most detailed slide, a map covered with colored marks representing different types of delays: red for construction, blue for traffic, green for special events. The patterns were clear and predictable. "We've been so focused on making the algorithm smarter," Mrs. Peterson said slowly, "that we never thought to improve the data it uses to make decisions." James nodded enthusiastically. "What if we connected the routing system to real-time information? Traffic monitoring apps, weather reports, construction schedules, event calendars, and what if drivers could report road conditions directly through a simple phone app? The computer could learn from actual experience instead of just calculating theoretical routes." The room fell completely silent for several seconds. James worried that he had said something wrong. But then Mr. Thompson spoke up. "This is brilliant," the head engineer said slowly, shaking his head in amazement. "We've been trying to build a perfect computer program that could predict everything. But what we really needed was a smart system that could learn from real-world feedback." Within 2 hours of the meeting's end, the engineering team had begun implementing James's suggestions. They subscribed to traffic data services, connected weather feeds to their routing system, and started building a simple mobile app that drivers could use to report road conditions. The results appeared almost immediately. By the end of the first week, delivery times had improved by 60%. Customer complaints dropped to nearly zero. The company began saving thousands of pounds every day in reduced overtime costs and fuel expenses. By Friday afternoon, word about the delivery system improvements had reached every corner of Techflow Solutions. The warehouse workers talked excitedly about finishing their shifts on time. Customer service representatives smiled as they answered phones that brought compliments instead of complaints. Even the accounting department noticed the dramatic reduction in overtime costs. Richard Bennett, the company's CEO, had been traveling in London when the changes began. He returned to Manchester on Friday evening to find his operations manager, Mrs. Davis, waiting with a report that seemed too good to believe. "Our delivery efficiency has improved by 60% in 4 days," she told him as they sat in his office overlooking the warehouse. "Customer complaints have dropped to almost zero. We're saving over £10,000 per week in reduced fuel costs and overtime pay." Mr. Bennett, a practical man who had built Techflow from a small startup 20 years earlier, studied the numbers carefully. "What changed? Did we hire a new engineering consultant? Install expensive new software?" Mrs. Davis smiled. "It was James Mitchell, one of our delivery drivers. He identified the problem our engineering team had been struggling with for months and provided a solution that worked immediately." "A delivery driver?" Mr. Bennett asked, genuinely surprised. "He has a computer science degree. But more importantly, he sees the real world that our computer systems were missing. Tom Williams from engineering can explain the technical details, but essentially, James taught our computers to learn from actual road conditions instead of just calculating theoretical routes." Mr. Bennett called an emergency meeting for Monday morning. He wanted the entire staff to understand what had happened and to recognize the person responsible for such extraordinary results. Monday arrived with bright sunshine streaming through the warehouse windows. James put on his best shirt under his delivery uniform, not knowing what to expect from the meeting. He had spent the weekend feeling amazed by how quickly his suggestions had been implemented and how dramatically they had worked. The warehouse floor filled with employees from every department: engineers, drivers, customer service staff, warehouse workers, and office personnel all gathered round a small platform that had been set up near the loading Docs, James stood near the back, still thinking of himself as just a delivery driver who had gotten lucky. Bennett stepped onto the platform and looked out at his assembled workforce. He was a tall, distinguished man in his 50s who spoke with the confidence of someone who had built a successful business through hard work and smart decisions. In 20 years of running TechFlow Solutions, Mr. Bennett began, his voice carrying clearly across the warehouse, I have never seen such a rapid and dramatic transformation in our operations. 4 days ago, we were struggling with delivery, delays that were costing us customers and money. Today, we have the most efficient delivery system in Manchester. The crowd murmured with interest and pride. Everyone had felt the positive changes, but hearing the numbers made the achievement feel even more significant. This transformation happened because James Mitchell, one of our delivery drivers, had the insight to see what our engineering team was missing and the courage to speak up with a solution. Mr. Bennett paused and looked directly at James. James, please come up here. James felt his face burning red as his colleagues turned to look at him. The crowd parted as he made his way to the platform, his legs feeling unsteady. Just 6 weeks ago, he had been a rejected job applicant loading packages into a van. Now the CEO was calling him forward in front of the entire company. James, Mr. Bennett said as he joined him on the platform, your fresh perspective and brilliant problem-solving have saved this company hundreds of thousands of pounds and possibly prevented us from losing major customers. Effective immediately. I'm promoting you to lead systems analyst with a salary that reflects your true value to TechFlow Solutions. The warehouse erupted in applause and cheers. James saw Tom Williams clapping enthusiastically, Mrs. Peterson nodding with approval, and even Mr. Thompson smiling with genuine respect. The other delivery drivers whooped and called out congratulations, but as the applause died down, James realized he had an opportunity to do something even more important than advancing his own career. Sir, James said, his voice stronger now, I want to thank you for this recognition, but I'd like to propose something that could help our company even more. What if we created a regular program where people from all departments, drivers, warehouse workers, customer service, engineering, meet together to share observations and ideas? Some of our best solutions might come from people who see problems from different angles. Mr. Bennett's eyes lit up with immediate interest. That's an excellent idea. James, I want you to design and lead that initiative. Make it happen over the following months. James's Fresh Eyes program became the talk of the Manchester business community. Workers from loading docks shared ideas with computer programmers. Customer service representatives suggested improvements that engineers had never considered. Warehouse staff identified efficiency problems that saved thousands of pounds. James moved into a comfortable office on the second floor. But he made sure to spend time every week in the warehouse and occasionally took delivery shifts. To stay connected to the real-world side of the business, he never forgot that his greatest strength came from understanding both the technical possibilities and the practical challenges of everyday work. The Manchester Evening News wrote a feature story about James's success, calling him the delivery driver who revolutionized logistics. Other companies invited him to speak at conferences about innovation and workplace collaboration. But his favorite moments came when young people who felt overlooked or undervalued asked for his advice. Everyone has valuable insights, James would tell them with the warmth of someone who remembered feeling invisible. Sometimes you just need to find the right person willing to listen and the courage to speak up when it matters most. The end.